You're listening to Superpower Up with multidimensional master, superpower expert, and former counterintelligence agent, Tonya Dawn Recla. If you're ready to disrupt reality, then sit down, strap in, and prepare to experience the show that proves there is no spoon.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, your superpower expert, and I'm excited for today's conversation, folks. We are talking today about using yoga to harness your superpowers. Now, make no mistake about it. We're not talking about getting your mat out, going to the gym, doing your stretches. For sure, if that's how you practice yoga, then that's how you practice yoga, and that's your experience of it. There's so much room in that conversation for the nuanced ways that we like to approach it. And yet, at the heart and soul of it is a very deep wisdom and knowledge tradition that sometimes gets skated over. So I'm really excited to talk today with our guest about how that informs this concept of superpowers or supernatural abilities or spirit provided gifts or however you prefer to refer to them. What is the intersection there? And I'm pretty positive that there's a significant intersection there. So today's guest is the author of the Business Casual Yoga. Vish Chatterji is joining us to really dive deeply into this ancient wisdom tradition that informs so much of our day-to-day and the projection around us. And yet most of us never stop to think about it. So of course, you're here, you're listening to this show, you stop to think about it. So we're going to give you a little fodder for that fire there. Please join me in welcoming to the show, Vish Chatterji. Welcome, Vish. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Hi, Tonya. I'm so excited to be on the show as well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. And we're going to jump in now and ask our quintessential question. What are your superpowers?
Well, it's, I'm sure for some people it's a very, very quick and simple answer. For me, it's a little bit more complicated. But I would say that, I've been a student of the Vedic tradition, the Vedic knowledge system for the last 20 years. And one of the superpowers that I feel I have is I'm able to experience the mystical aspects of this tradition, but I'm able to then explain them in a way that is very relevant and powerful and impactful for the normal world. So I'm sort of in a way, the translator, the super translator of taking a very esoteric mystical science and then presenting it in a very accessible way for normal people in the business world. And so that's part of what I've done in the book is the Business Casual Yogi is filled with very deep, esoteric, powerful techniques from a very ancient tradition, but they're expressed in a very accessible way for normal people. So it's like, everyday person can get a taste of the mystery of creation, so to speak.
Beautiful, beautiful. We tend to attract the bridges here, and so that fits in very perfectly with our tribe. What's fascinating about this is this idea of kind of this, the never the twain shall meet, right? It really doesn't seem like it connects in if you look at yoga versus business per se. And I think that's how we've looked at it, right? Is in this compartmentalization format. But the interconnection there and all of it is us, right? And so we talk a lot in our superpower programs and working with clients around, but it's really important that we start to talk about like personal development as something different from the spiritual journey, if you will, the spiritual practices, not because they need to be separate, but because if we don't, then like one has one motivation, one has another with different processes and practices to get to an end goal. And most of the time that end goal kind of meets up together. But yet if we don't kind of look at it, we start to take kind of personal development principles and try to apply it to our spiritual life and our spiritual practices and try to apply them into like business success, right? And it starts to get really muddy. Certainly it all has to get integrated again. But I think that divide where we thought that we could have a spiritual or religious or, tapped in kind of identity privately, but then in business, we have to be this way, really kind of created a lot of confusion. Have you found similar?
Yeah, definitely. I felt like, people almost have two personas. They've got their inner sort of spiritual journey persona, and then their business world outside persona. And sometimes for people in the business world, the outside business persona is so powerful, the other persona just sort of ceases to exist in some ways. And so we start to see some really terrible behavior in the business world. But one of the frustrations I had, and this was something that it's almost an epiphany that I had, was I would be in a community of yogis or spiritual practitioners and find this incredible knowledge and experiences that these groups of people were able to have collectively with each other. And then I would go in the business world and find that, it was completely lacking. And, in a regular corporate office in America, it's almost like they got left out of this beautiful connection to spirit. And so I started to think, like, that's not fair. Like, how can such a massive swath of our society, there's probably over 100 million people that work in corporate America, how can they be left out of this beautiful, these beautiful experiences? And I found that in the yogic communities, or the very spiritual minded communities, it's almost like you looked at somebody in the business world and they just sort of looked down on them in some ways. And I felt that way because I'd wear business casual clothes and show up to a spiritual gathering and people sort of look at me funny. And I'm like, hey, I'm one of you too. Just because I'm dressed different doesn't mean you exclude me. And so I felt like, why is it that it's only the sort of the hippie part of the world that gets to have access to these amazing experiences and techniques and teachings, and the business world doesn't get that? It sort of feels unfair. But then
please continue.
Yeah, but then I found that the business world and people in leadership roles in any kind of institution, they crave to improve themselves. There's a need that I want to get better. I want to do better. And maybe it's driven because they want a promotion or they want a better job review. But most people just have a motivation. I want to improve myself. And so I found that what is in the spiritual traditions is the ultimate self-improvement process. So if I could merge those together, I could bring the power of the spiritual world into the everyday regular world. And that's what I feel is part of my life mission.
Beautiful. I love the eloquence with which you explained that. We'll dive into that further. We'll talk about those divergence, those of you out there listening that kind of, can kind of see through all of those lenses and how to be that bridge and how to kind of do that. And also for those of you who know that you lean on one side or the other of this equation, and you really, really want to be able to incorporate the gifts and the wealth of information that exists on the other side of it. And that's an easy walk too, right? It's certainly a journey, but we can tie that all together when we start kind of taking a more elevated perspective of some of these concepts. But before we would go off to break, Vish, would you like to share with folks where they can go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so the businesscasualyogi.com is the website for the book. So that gives some information and background about the book. And then from there, there's links to my own personal website, as well as that of my co-collaborator on the book, a Himalayan yogi named Yogi Vishwaketu. I also have Instagram, the Business Casual Yogi, and there's a Facebook page as well dedicated to the Business Casual Yogi. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Typically business people find me on LinkedIn as Vish Chatterji. And yeah, so website, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm figuring out how to use all of them.
Beautiful. Well, we'll have all those pages or all of those links on the episode page. So make sure you go to superpowerexperts.com to find those. We are talking today with Vish Chatterji about using yoga to harness your superpowers. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts. And we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter, we now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower quiz. And as Nivali Recla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world. Perfect. We're back. You're listening to Disrupt Reality on the Superpower Up Network. This is Tonya Dawn Recla. I'm talking today with Vish Chatterji about using yoga to harness your superpowers. before the break, we started, fleshing out this dialogue of like, I know so many of you have these experiences of kind of not being this enough for this group, but being too of this for this group, right? And so whatever world you're in, it maybe being too businessy for the hippie world, too hippie for the business world, or too not enough, right? It's like if you kind of start doing these crossover routines, then we lose the purity of the identity of that specific group. And I contend that that's the work, right? You can't necessarily walk toward oneness if you have all of these kind of dualistic filters on everything. And so some of it is the disintegration of those chasms that we've placed between ourselves and other people, between groups, and ultimately, I mean, countries. Like we're talking about getting to the heart of divisiveness. And what I hear Vish saying in all of this is that yoga carries some amazing secrets about how to begin that process. I mean, dare we say yoga could save the world, right? And I don't think that that's that far-fetched, because we're talking about an internal disciplined process of harnessing kind of the highest and best of all of us. And so why not, right? So talk to me a little bit about why people resist that, right? Those folks that you were discussing earlier about the ones who've never had those experiences. Once they are aware of it, what's the resistance?
Well, I think part of it is that as human beings, we're all very caught up in our identities. Identity is what gives us sometimes a sense of meaning. And we've all heard the story about people who work and work and work, and then they retire, and soon after retirement they leave their body, they pass away because they lost that identity. So it almost becomes a struggle for survival. If I'm if I'm a vice president at this company in this pay grade and with this power and this team, and I make this product, if I lose that, it's almost like I lose my reason for existence. And so people fight to hang on to that. But the thing is, and even in the spiritual world, people who, follow a guru, they're like, well, I'm a disciple of this guru and I practice this type of yoga, and therefore I'm this, and I'm going to wear these clothes, I'm going to put these beads around my neck, and this is my identity. And if you were to strip that away from them, they too would have the same reaction. So I think the fundamental need is that we are very attached to identity, because it almost becomes a survival mechanism. And part of the spiritual practice and the practice of yoga is to move away from the attachment to that identity, to live a life of less attachment, and not to be so driven and connected to ego-constructed identities. So that's a problem on all sides, not just in the business world necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that too. And it's that the letting go of that, right? That, I mean, and it's not flippant, folks. I mean, this, we kind of, there's always frequency and dimensionality in all of this. And so we start in some spaces as like really worrying about what people think and getting our feelings hurt by that. But it encompasses so much of our culture, at least here in the States, around who we believe ourselves to be, what we believe our value and worth to be. And when we define that through either roles, obligations, identities, accomplishments, achievements, it doesn't really matter. Anything outside of whatever you believe is that the essence that kind of comes through and impacts all of us, then it is challenging, right? And it leads to despair. Before the show, Vish and I were discussing, this, the spectrum is so big, right? There are folks in business that just want to be happier, right? They just want some relief from the stress of their existence. They want something different from their day-to-day turmoil, if you will. And then there's folks, who similar to a lot of us, we felt very called to have an impact. What I would love to tap into, and I think that Vish, you're a great person to do that with, is some of the more kind of mystical knowledge, because the idea of using yoga to kind of tap in or to get centered or whatever isn't lost on most of our crowd. What might be is what lies beyond even that, right? Okay, great. I feel I'm looser. I feel like I'm more tapped in. I feel activated energetically. Awesome. That's all well and good. But to what end, right? Where do you think that path goes? And what's some of the lesser known wisdom of yoga?
So for this, we have to journey back about somewhere 8,000, 10,000 years ago to the time of what are called the Rishis. The Rishis of ancient India, they were seers, basically. And these people, very, very advanced for their time, they sought to understand the workings of our entire universe. And rather than a scientist of modern day that's trying to measure everything, the physical reality that they're in, these Rishis, they went inwards. So they went inwards and they went into deep states of meditation to tap into superpowers. And in flashes of insight, they started to see literally the meaning of the universe. So, just imagine, you're in ancient, the foothills of the Himalayas, where current day Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India meet. In that area, there was an ancient river called the Indus River civilization that existed there. And for generations, these people would meditate in deep states and discover, the nature of everything. And they would then pass on these insights and discuss these insights and pass them in oral tradition for thousands of years until about 4,000 to 5,000 BC, where they started to write down these insights. And these insights became known as the Vedas, and that's why we refer to it as the Vedic tradition. And in these writings, we find treatises on health, like understanding our physical health, like healing modalities. So Ayurvedic medicine, that entire system of plants and, using herbs to heal and understanding what is the unique nature of our body, what's the right schedule, time, food, diet, herbs to take to improve our body. These are all documented in these Vedas. They wrote treatises on psychology, on understanding the nature of the human mind. They explained, in some ways, atomic theory, which even now modern science is starting to validate some of these insights that these people had on the nature of structure in the universe. They also wrote the treatises on philosophy and the idea of an inner soul having, not being bound by body and mind and being, literally a superpower, having a soul that transcends. From these writings came the concept of a soul that cannot be cut by a sword, cannot be wet by water, cannot be burned by fire or dried by wind. The soul continues to endure and goes in from one body to another. The idea of multiple lifetimes, it was all sort of understood by these people. And this is the entire system from which also yoga comes from, the idea of, perfecting your body, keeping it free of disease in order to experience deeper states of meditation, in order to have a glimpse of reality. So this became, this was a precursor to what we now call the yoga tradition. Mm-hmm. From that also came the idea of understanding the planets and the effect of different planets on us, on crops, on, based on moon cycles, when's the right time to plant certain crops, when's the right time to harvest certain medicines. What effect do the other planets have on our overall journey through life? They wrote about these things, and this became known as the Jyotish system, the Vedic astrology system. They wrote about what is a right way to construct buildings and temples. It became known as Vastu. What is the right orientation to support each of us human beings on our journey through life? And of course, that became the precursor of Feng Shui. And so this Vedic system is comprehensive, massive, and insightful, developed thousands of years ago, specifically through the cultivation of insight, which you could call the cultivation of a superpower. And so today, in our modern world, if we start using these techniques, we too can have those insights, and that's how we ourselves can cultivate what are called superpowers. Now, in the yoga tradition, these are called siddhis, Siddhr, siddhis. And they're like a byproduct. If you do these practices, you do these techniques through the yoga tradition, meditation, Ayurvedic tradition, the spatial orientation, Vastu system, Jyotish, the Vedic astrology, you use these practices. As a byproduct, you develop siddhis, which are superpowers. Now, the trick is to use them for good purposes and not to use them for evil purposes. That's always can be a challenge for some people.
Well, I can laugh only because you would not believe the intricacies that go into developing a vast reaching organizational structure around superpowers and the responsibility that we take with that. In fact, those of you who've listened to the show for more than a minute, you probably have heard me talk about that particular resistance point of my journey, because the guidance I got, the question that was posed to me was like, well, will you teach people superpowers? We need your help to do this, right? That was how I interpreted it. And I was like, okay, I guess so. I'm kind of doing that now anyway, so why not? Like that sounds fun, right? Well, obviously I didn't read the fine print, because the fine print was everything you're speaking to, which is it's not even just about using them for good. It's both the commitment to using them for good, but really truly having enough awareness of every aspect of your beingness in multiple kind of dimensional representations of what that means to even be able to commit fully to it, right? Because we may think, yeah, absolutely, of course I would only do good things with it. But that doesn't mean there's not some aspect of you that gets ornery from time to time, and it's not interested in that. And if you don't have control or management of that, or any kind of agency over it, you actually can't commit on its behalf, because you're letting it run amok and do whatever it wants and create in your world. And so I'm like, okay, well, how do we do that? Right. And so the foundational principles and the response, I mean, it was just this beautiful unfoldment. And of course, the divine knows exactly what it's doing, because I probably would not have been interested in that full project. And it was just a beautiful internal journey for myself to really look at, like, it's easy to say, like, we want you to use your superpowers for good, or you kind of have to, in our world, it's like you cannot harness them with any reliable degree of effectiveness or efficiency unless you're only using them for good, because you may have successes here and there, but there's a destruction principle that goes along with that if they're not being used infused with what we would refer to as divine energy. However, most people have no idea that they don't know themselves. Like they don't have any awareness of the vastness of self to even be able to state what they want or what they will do.
But one thing is, as from a Western perspective, if somebody has let's say somebody's a psychic and that's their superpower, they become so identified with that superpower, and that's all they can think about is, well, I'm a psychic and I have psychic abilities. Now, in the Vedic tradition, the yogis of ancient times, they saw these superpowers as byproducts. They're just sort of byproducts of the journey. So they're not something that you necessarily gravitate towards or identify with. They just happen, and they're just a sign that you're doing something good on your journey. We're all on a journey towards, they would say we're all on a journey towards enlightenment at the end of the day. And if we're enlightened, then we transcend space and time reality. We transcend causality. We transcend our mind and our bodies. And so until enlightenment, we're all sort of struggling with this journey of emotions and mental pains and physical pains and all the sort of karmic challenges of living through life. And as we do these practices and we sort of become more evolved, as our soul becomes more evolved, as we become more evolved, we start to automatically get these superpowers, these siddhis. That doesn't mean we start jumping and say, okay, I got the superpower, I'm now going to be this super psychic. It's just you see it, oh, that's nice, I have that, but I'm going to continue on my journey of development. Now, if somebody says, look, I really need some help and you have this power, could you help me with that? Yeah, you might offer that as something to help. But I think, it's easy for people to get so caught up in that superpower they have, they forget that it's actually just it's just a byproduct of the overall journey.
Well, and add on top of that, the complexity of the perspective that you spoke to is a traditional kind of representation of a lot of people's journeys. However, that's fairly isolated. The people who acknowledge even within themselves that they want more or want enlightenment or whatever the case may be, the work seems to be much more focused on what drives the motivations of the individualistic westernized worlds. And enlightenment isn't always that kind of place that they go. In fact, a lot of our folks have had experiences in something spiritual or energetic or religious or whatever that struck that box was for them, and are not interested in tapping into it again. And so what motivates them through that, the gateway, is the pursuit of self-excellence. And in that oftentimes is this, what gifts do I have? Who am I? What is my identity? And that was, and then we see them come online as a reminder that you're part of something much bigger. But you're right, if they stay in that space too long, they become parlor tricks ultimately, because the connection to that evolution has to continue to fuel the use of the gift. Or like you said, it won't be the byproduct anymore.
Yeah, Tonya, you're exactly right. I mean, and that's part of the motivation with the Business Casual Yogi, is it's a book that promises people to become more excellent at their work. The promise of the book is you use these techniques and you're going to find a way to have more success in your work, more happiness, and more balance. And at the end of the day, everybody wants more happiness. I think we can agree on that. You may not be searching for enlightenment, but you're searching to be happier. Like I wish, I want to have happiness in my family. I want to have success at my job. I want to accomplish big things. And those are all noble goals. And so as I teach people through a system of breathing techniques, physical postures, meditation techniques, some sound techniques, some lifestyle philosophical frameworks, as they go through this process, in a way, the success comes as a byproduct. The happiness comes as a byproduct. What's actually happening is they're becoming, the reader of my book is becoming more evolved along their journey. They're becoming more soul connected, so to speak. And as they become more soul connected, the byproducts are the happiness, success, and more balance.
Isn't that? And that's the flip, right? It's like whatever is motivating you to take that step down the journey, and we come at it from all different angles. But that is the ultimate resting place that we get to, or not resting place, the ultimate awareness that we get to, right?
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's coming at it a different way. I was always very fascinated with this guy, Rajneesh, the Osho. I think he was quite a controversial figure in the yoga world and the spiritual world. But I went to Pune I wanted to go to the ashram. And of course, before you can go into the ashram, you have to take an AIDS test. And I thought, this is crazy. Why an AIDS test? I don't get it. And of course, I turned away and I left. And I then discovered that, people were cavorting in the ashram and having sex all over the place. And I was like, what is that? This is crazy. What does that have to do with spirituality? And I happened to be invited in Rishikesh to the sister ashram of Rajneesh. And I asked the Swami, I said, what is this whole thing? There's all this reputation that Osho and Rajneesh have, that's this cult, and people come and they're just, having sex at will. And, what does that have to do with spirituality? And he said, this Osho was just a brilliant marketer. He knew that that's what's going to get people to show up. If you have all this crazy controversy that's like this sex love fest, people are going to show up. And once they arrive, yes, they'll get that. But at the same time, they will be delivered the truth. And those are the people that need it the most. And I thought, it's an interesting perspective, that
it is an interesting perspective. Well, we have a whole sex, love, and superpower show full of people and amazing guests who do pursue, the divine through sexual pursuits. And so it certainly isn't unheard of. And then our incorporating superpowers gets to talk about people who choose really colorful marketing tricks to get people to come in. So you're speaking a lot of our languages there. I love this conversation, Vish. You and I could probably dive down a lot of rabbit holes with it. Folks, if you're listening and you're just getting started on something, you're just kind of like, what, maybe I could be a little bit happier in my life. Like I've got everything I want and need, but yeah, okay, I'll admit I'd take a little more happiness. Go, absolutely start diving in and go check out Vish's book. And then that's a great place to start if you're in business. If not, just trust yourself. Like just follow the curiosity, be gentle with yourself. For our heavy hitters there who are actively in pursuit of, their highest accessible vibration and however you're qualifying your journey to yourself, then dive in deeply. Allow some of these things that have pervaded our culture to represent just the tip of the iceberg, and start looking at what's underneath and start being a little bit more curious about the inception points of the traditions that drive a lot of the popularity, right? The popularity isn't bad. Like getting people there is okay. But you can't stop there. So dig deeper, folks. That's going to be your challenge from today's episode. Dig deeper into what you're doing, whether it's to become more aware of why you're making some of the choices that you're making in your existence, or some of the things that you see around you or that maybe you participate in. Dig deeper into those. There are always more layers to discover, and there's a richness to this experience that you lose if you don't keep digging.
And there are layers. Tonya,
I was just going to ask for last word, so hit me with them. Go.
Yeah, so there are layers, and we're all, and I think it's quite common knowledge now where people say there's a body, there's a mind, and then there's this other thing. It's whether it's a soul or a spirit or a consciousness, whatever it is, we all sort of fundamentally have three basic layers. We have our physical body, bones, tendons, muscles, and we have our mental layer, which is full of our emotions and intellect. And then we have a deeper layer that, some people call intuition, some people consciousness, some people it's the soul, some people it's spirit. But when we come to work, in whatever work we do in the world, whatever business we're involved with, if we just come with the layer of our mind, we're sort of missing the point. And so, yes, your body shows up at the meeting, your body shows up at the office, your mind and intellect is going crazy, coming up with ideas, but you have to bring the level of soul into it as well. And when you bring all three layers of your existence into business, it becomes very magical. Magical things can happen because the soul is at the realm of magic. And so what these ancient Vedic people were able to understand was there's different sciences to take care of those different parts of our being. So the physical body is taken care of through right diet, right exercise, right sleep, right living. And so to understand what is the right way to take care of our body, the entire science of Ayurveda is a mind-body medicine system, but really like how to take care of your body well. Then you get into the mind and the proclivities of the mind, and that gets into psychology. And the science that they use to understand the mind better is the astral level, astrology. So for instance, I'm a practitioner of Vedic astrology, and from somebody's birth chart, I can often quite accurately see what's going on in somebody's mind, because the mind is made up of all this conditioning and experiences that people have had, experiences that people will have. And so that's the science there. And then the most deep layer of our existence, our soul level, that is what yoga is designed to take care of. So yoga, even though we see it as a physical practice, is actually a practice of the soul. Because as you practice this entire system of yoga, as I was originally described, it is to get to the causal layer of our existence, to help our soul on its journey, to help reduce the effects of the things that would happen to our body and our mind in the course of a normal person's journey. So for somebody where a disease of the body or disease of the mind would take them out, through yoga practice, that effect gets lessened. They're able to go through challenges of the body and the mind with more grace. And so yoga is actually a practice of the causal level of our existence. Astrology is a look at the astral layer of our existence, and Ayurveda is a look at the physical aspect of our existence, and they all integrate together.
Beautiful. What a fantastic little blueprint there. For those of you that lights you up and intrigues you, go study, reach out to Vish, go, dive more deeply into this stuff. Don't wait, folks. If you're feeling activated by this, there's something in it for you. Go, take action, do something, but follow the pursuit, right? And when you find the thing that you want to dig deeply into, then pause there. Learn there, dig deeply there. Okay. Don't flit about, to all of these different things without giving yourself a moment to really gather up what's in it for you. And I love Vish's approach and everything about how you've packaged this. I think it's very easy to consume for folks who otherwise might not even touch it because it's so vast, it's intimidating. And so really well done packaging this and explaining this and presenting it in a way that doesn't water down its value and its worth, and yet makes it, approachable by those who might not otherwise. It's a beautiful gift that you have and that you're sharing with the world, and we honor you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonya. Appreciate that.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And to all of you out there, we appreciate you also. We know you're loyal, and we appreciate the listens, and you sharing it with friends. Thank you so much. Don't forget to go and download the app. Go to where you get apps and you can type in Superpower Net. And there you can stream your favorite shows on our network and get all kinds of fun, super powered information. And regardless of where you find your pathways, make sure that you continue to journey. As always, folks, go out, uncover your superpowers, and change the world. Take care, everyone.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower quiz today.